Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Well, let's crack on with today's first story. Now today's first story is one that we've covered in the past, but now it comes with a final update as well. So as always, timestamps are down in the description and along the timeline below. If you want to skip certain parts of it, please feel free to do so. It's from the True Off My Chest subreddit from Wolfie Love 1, who says, I didn't tell my husband. My partner, 31 male, and I, 25 female, are having our second child, and he hasn't been working due to an in-work injury, so for the last 2 going on 3 months, it's been very stressful for us. My paternal aunt gave me half of what she got from selling my grandma's house, her mother. She inherited it last year due to my grandmother passing away, and she spent 6 months getting my moochers of a father and brother out of the house and fixing it up. We haven't spoken since the funeral, and last week she called to meet for lunch, and when I went inside she handed me a check worth over $200,000. I didn't understand, but she said my grandma thought of me as a daughter, and I was the only one other than her that took care of her and my grandpa, and while they didn't have the money to give me, she sold the house, and after talking to her husband, decided I deserved half of it. My hormones were everywhere, and she had to help me calm down because we were in so much debt. I felt so thankful. She told me she wasn't giving anything to anyone else and would prefer for me not to tell anyone, so I didn't. I put it in my account, and once it cleared, I began slowly paying off my husband's and my debt. I paid people back that had loaned us money, cleared our credit cards, paid our car off, put $10,000 in our daughter's savings account, and a plan to make one for our second child when it's born. I didn't tell my husband because we have separate finances and have since we got together. He doesn't even know what our debts were or how far behind we were, so I didn't think he would notice, but he watches his credit, and when he says that it went up and that I have received a letter from my community college that my debt was paid, he asked me. I told him my aunt gave me money, but not how much, and he tried accessing my bank account. When he couldn't get in, he took my debit card without me knowing and went to an ATM and saw the balance. He yelled at me for hiding it. I told him it doesn't matter because we were no longer in debt and we could finish our degrees. He walked out and hasn't spoken to me in 3 days. I requested a new debit card and changed my information regarding my account because now I don't trust him not to try to buy something. I admit I should have told him, but it's not like he knows how much money I make from my job. I don't know what to do. Edits. Okay, so reading the comments, I need to answer some questions. 1. He doesn't like my family at all. I met him when I was a kid because he was my older brother's best friend. Things changed when we got together when I was 19 and they don't speak anymore. He avoids anything to do with my family. 2. Most of our relationship is great. We agreed to have 1 kid because I dreamed of being a mum. But during the pregnancy, he treated me like crap, and even after our daughter was born, he continuously made me feel like a bad mum for asking him for help when I was exhausted and he just wanted to play games or drink. He only started helping and being supportive after being separated for a few months and us getting counseling. 3. He and my daughter both have my last name. 4. I wanted joint finances when we got married and he didn't. I was only in debt of $5,000 from my college at the time and he had some, but he told me that he had it covered, which I found out he did not. 5. What I meant about him not knowing how much debt we were in is that he'd open credit cards in both of our names and max them out, and then when he couldn't use them anymore, he'd apply for more. I did not know this until hiring a firm to help get my credit up. They told me I could press charges or pay them off. I wanted to pay it off because he's my husband, and even if he puts us in debt, I do love him. 6. We didn't want more children. He got into a fight with his sister and she did something she shouldn't have, but he also refused to get snipped. We didn't find out I was pregnant until it was too late for another adoption. 7. We moved in with my mum to help us get things back on track, and he got hurt at work. Yes, I believe he is depressed, but he's also blown all the money he had saved on video games, liquor and pot. He didn't spend a dime on any of the debt he caused all for our daughter. He makes more than I do, but with the way he spends his money, it's like we live on 1 income. 8. Do I trust him? Yes. I do in almost every way I can except for money, and he's proven that again and again. I also have been giving him small portions of the money so he can still go and do things he wants to do. It's not like I'm just hoarding it away from him. I just didn't tell him that it wasn't from my paychecks like he assumed. 9. He has the pins to my debit card. Because I didn't tell him about the money, I do let him use it when he needs to. Opie then says some comments and says, I've tried multiple different birth controls and the side effects make it difficult. However, my doctor and I have decided to tie my tubes because I've had multiple miscarriages and high-risk pregnancies. I didn't plan to have any more kids, but his sister poked holes in our condoms, and by the time we found out I was pregnant, we couldn't get an abortion in our state due to being past 6 weeks. His sister ruined that for us by poking holes in them after they got into an argument. I didn't react well to birth control, and because of my age, doctor won't make it more permanent. Then responds again to someone else saying, not at all. He didn't want more kids either, but refuses to get snipped. It took me going to 4 different doctors to find someone that would do it. And then someone asked about being in contact with sister-in-law and says no, we cut contact when we discovered I was pregnant. We told his family, and she just laughed and threw it in our faces, that she had the upper hand. We haven't spoke to her since we found out 6 months ago. The update came in 3 days later and says, I'm not sure if this is how you update, but I figured I would go ahead and try. If you're watching my post, thanks for the advice. And even if some of the comments weren't that nice, I'm still thankful. Over the last 3 days, I've spoken to my mum and my in-laws. My husband reached out to her that he didn't want to be with me anymore, but it wasn't because of the money. It was because he felt forced to get married and have a baby. And even though we got pregnant with the second one because of his sister, he still blames me. 6 years together and I felt like he refused to talk about it. Even when we were in counseling, I asked his mum what he wanted to do because he wasn't answering my phone, calls or messages, and she said she sent him money for a plane ticket so he could go to her. I'm heartbroken that she didn't tell him to try harder for his kids. After all, his dad left him and his siblings. I can't force him to stay and I have to think about them right now. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I spoke to a lawyer my friend used for his divorce yesterday and he's going to help me draw up a divorce plan. He said my husband can go after the money, but he doesn't think he will. I'm filing for full custody and will be asking for a minimum in child support unless he wants to sign his rights over. I'm done being stupid and thinking he would grow up. I packed his things and hired a moving company to take them to his mum's house, so all of his stuff will be gone in a few days. My first clue he didn't want our daughter was that she was not even crying asking where he is. She's just running around with me and my mum. I did send him a little bit of money for his travels and told his mum I'll send the divorce papers as soon as I get them. She just told me okay and hung up. So that's what's been happening the last few days. Haven't spoken to my soon-to-be ex-husband and I'm now fully on my own since I was 19. I'm hoping everything goes good. Hopefully I don't have to update again. And then Opie's new update comes in. Hey guys, I thought I wouldn't update again, but I figured I could just give a final update to everything. My almost fully divorced husband signed the papers my lawyer sent him. Not the divorce papers, but I guess papers to him agreeing to what I wanted, and all he asked for was $2,000 so he could get his own car. He agreed to pay child support for our daughter and our now newborn son, who was born Saturday night. No one in his family asked for pictures or even his name, so I decided to block everyone I could find because I had no right to see him or my daughter. He agreed to give me full custody and told my lawyer he didn't want visitation or anything. I did move money to my newborn savings account and I'm making sure my name is off of the credit cards I paid off for him, just in case he decides to use them again. My mum is the only person outside of my aunt and my husband who knows about the money, and as soon as I can go back to work, I plan on using some of it as a down payment to a house. My lawyer is going to help me make sure my husband won't be able to have anything to do with it. If I have to wait any longer, I will, but at the moment, that's my plan. My daughter is so in love with her brother, and my mum is helping me the way I wished he would have helped. The rest of my money I have put into a separate account for emergencies. I'm also reaching out to my advisors at my college, and I'm planning to start school again in August. I only had 1 year to finish, but I had my daughter and wasn't able to go back, so I'm hoping everything works out. My lawyer said it could take a few months for this to be finished, but he said since my husband isn't fighting or changing anything that we wanted, it should be over a year. Also, I forgot the money wasn't technically an inheritance. My aunt gave it to me and wrote it off as a gift. It was her inheritance, not mine. She just felt I deserved it for caring for my grandpa and grandma. So in the US, if he wanted to fight for it, he legally could get half. And that was OP's final update. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from the best of Redditor updates from Lucy Araya Rose, who put this together, but the author was a-water-pls, who says, "Am I the a-hole for going on a vacation with my wife's family instead of my own?" It says background. My family has always been well off, and by that I mean like we would take family vacations 2 to 3 times per year. It's still like that now, but I've noticed a difference in how my family acts now that my female 27 wife, female 24, and I are married. About 3 weeks ago, my dad booked a trip to Italy. Everyone was excited. The family group chat was lit up for days following the announcement. I called my dad and talked to him for a while, and eventually I thanked him for including my wife, who'd always felt left out. There was a slight pause, and then he told me that he booked the rest of the available seats on that particular flight, and there was only enough for him, my mother, grandparents, my sister, plus her husband, and me. He booked it without even taking my wife into consideration. Now, I know what a lot of people would think, that it was just a mistake, but I don't think so given the fact that my wife has been excluded in other ways before. And if it were a mistake, he'd do everything he could to change it before even announcing the vacation. My heart sunk. I looked at my wife, who could tell something was off, and I told my dad to just give my seat to someone else because if she wasn't included, I wasn't going. In the past, I was able to include my wife myself, but I was tired of us being singled out. They never did that to my sister and her husband. They've always included them as a couple. But when it comes to my wife and I, we've always had to figure our own way into the mix, as if we weren't to be taken seriously. I'm not doing that now, and I drew the hard line in the sand this time. This man had the audacity to say that her and I could book our own flight and just, meet them there. I simply said, absolutely not, then hung up. Needless to say, my wife was in tears. She was upset, but she was glad that I was sticking by her. A couple of days went by and we decided to go on our own vacation to a much humbler location, large rental cabin, with her family, who are all downright amazing. Well, my family found out and they have not stopped blowing up my phone. My mum called me one night during all this and said that I was being unreasonable and that there's no way I couldn't just book a separate flight and instead book an entirely different vacation with her family. I explained to her that that wasn't the point, that the point was that they have excluded my wife from every family-related event ever since we got married, which always puts me in a position to fix it. My mum basically called me crazy and that I was overthinking a simple mistake on my dad's part. For some reason, I'm starting to think that maybe I am overthinking it and that I should just talk with my dad to see if excluding my wife was intentional, which was another point my mum brought up. Am I the a-hole? OP then edits the post and says, "Wow, thank you so much for the overwhelming support. We went to bed and then woke up to almost 200 notifications. That is crazy. My wife and I sat down a couple of hours ago and had a discussion about what our next step should be. We've both agreed that we're going to have a family meeting with my family this Monday and confront them head on. We feel that this is the best way to handle this situation and we honestly just need answers directly from them. As for the comments, a lot of you brought up gaslighting and how it causes rifts in families, so we're going to learn more about it to better protect ourselves. I made a vow to my wife when we got married that I'd put her first and make her my priority, and I'm sticking to it. Again, thank you so much for all your support, and hopefully I can make an update post to fill you guys in on everything. Greatest wishes." So someone in the comments was obviously asking about family wealth, and OP responded and said, "Okay, so my family is well off financially, mainly because of generational inheritance. It started with my great-grandfather, mum's side, who owned a bunch of properties, plus land. Over time, investments kept getting bigger and bigger, and then one of the plots of land was sold for a lot of money for suburban neighborhoods to be built. We're talking like a mile of land. My family has a steady high income ever since I was born, and I think the deal is the fact that I married a woman, We're not planning on having a family to pass down anything to. But my sister and her husband have been actively trying to have kids for the past year now, and every time they're around, my parents talk inheritance to some degree. That's just my suspicions, and my wife backs me on it. I feel like when my parents are eventually gone, crap's gonna get ugly. And then there was another sweet comment from OP, which says, "What's funny is that if that's the case with them, I'd still be well off. I literally don't even need the inheritance, lol. My sister and her husband do. And even then, my wife is more important than any dollar bill ever printed, and I'd rather take that to my grave, to be honest." So OP then continues to update the post and says, "First off, thank you all for the positivity. It's been amazing seeing so much support. We didn't post an update yesterday since it was Valentine's Day, so we're posting it today. We had a family meeting at our house on Monday, and it was interesting. I started with reminding my dad what he did, how it matched up to all the other times, how it made her and I feel, and how his and my mum's reactions made us feel. I told him that my wife is my everything, and what we do together. Our marriage is just as valid. You either want us in your life or you don't, and lately your actions have told us the latter." Then I brought up gaslighting. We did some digging the previous night, watched videos and read articles to better understand it. I explained to them what it was and how they did it and how it made us feel. My conclusion was my reasoning for planning the separate vacation with my wife's family. My sister started crying. She apologized for not saying anything and not paying attention. Her husband was upset as well. My sister said, "You have to book a different flight, Dad," which I pointed out that it was too late. Our vacation was already booked and we couldn't bail on it. My sister said, "Well, then we're not going to Italy then. You two, Mum and Dad, can go, but we are not. I feel horrible now." Few arguments between parents and my sister. My wife and I sat there with our mouths hung open until my sister plus her husband got up and left. OP then adds, "My suspicions were right. The reason why my wife and I were being treated unfairly was because of inheritance fears. Their explanation was that they didn't want inheritance getting into the wrong hands, so they wanted to dote on my sister plus her husband to ensure that it won't." Their actual words. That right there confirmed everything, because they basically said, "Yes, we treat your sister plus her husband better and we're driving it home with the inheritance." It ended with my parents leaving angry, not at their actions, but the fact that they were getting called out. From this point on, we will be going low contact with my parents and maybe try to amend things between my sister plus her husband. We will not attend gatherings/events if one/both of us feel excluded. We will demand that we be treated just as seriously. We now know our boundaries and we will set them. It was a very heartbreaking experience and we were disgusted at the whole thing. We still are. Right now, we just have to take this time to move forward. I doubt we'll be able to make any more updates beyond this, but again, we wanted to thank you all for the advice, love, and support. We truly appreciate it. This was a throwaway, but I think I'm going to keep this account up, just not save the login info. Thank you so much, and best wishes. I think it was great that OP stood up for themselves in this situation, stood up for their wife as well. And I was also incredibly glad to see OP's sister and husband also do the same. And it's just a shame that it didn't knock any sense into the parents at all. And just destroying links to your children, absolutely foolish. And I've just got to say I'm sorry that you were going through that as well. You know, absolutely we can see the parents are bloody awful in this. But at the same time, it doesn't make it any easier for you. You know, there's still going to be pain. That's still your parents that's done that to you. So I am sorry you're going through that. But again, well done for sticking up for yourself and your wife at the same time. Anyway, now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.
Yeah, man, I remember being so naive when life was good, weather and palm trees. Back in the day, you were everything I need. But then along came a time when you crushed my dreams. Oh yeah, you played me like a fool when you made me believe that the line between love wasn't thick enough to read. Oh yeah, you see we in despair, crime everywhere. You're selling false hope cause you just don't care. Nah, you just don't care. Nah, 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 you just don't care. You just don't. Still selling false hope, cause you just don't care. House, house.